Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Anna Tabor, and I'm the director of the Pension Action Center at UMass Boston. It's my great pleasure to thank you for joining us today for PAC's annual fundraiser. Today's session is being recorded. The theme for our event today is equity in retirement. There's a crisis in retirement security in the US. At the Pension Action Center, we know this firsthand because we speak with hundreds of people each year about the obstacles they face to get by in retirement. Roughly 1 in 3 American adults over the age of 65 is economically insecure. The figures are even higher for people of color and for women. In the last year, PAC recovered benefits worth $1.8 million, and we provided free pension help to over 540 people through our helpline. Since our program began in 1994, we've recovered over $68 million in benefits and helped over 11,000 people. We pursue justice for workers and their families, making sure that they have the money they earn and need to live a dignified life in retirement. We can't do this without our dedicated supporters, and that's why I'm so grateful to have you here with us today. I'm thrilled today to welcome acclaimed journalist Callie Crossley as our featured speaker. Ms. Crossley is the host of the GBH radio program Under the Radar. But first, I'd like to thank our institutional sponsors for supporting PAC's free legal services. Please join me in thanking our primary sponsors, AARP Massachusetts, Zarnowski Consulting, McDermott, Will & Emery, LLP, Point 32 Health Foundation, Sageview Advisory Group, and Winston & Strawn. Our supporting sponsor, Ropes & Gray, and our primary sponsors, Dabowski Law and Holland & Hart. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank our host committee and the PAC Advisory Board for making today's event a success. Thank you. The Pension Action Center helps workers and retirees who would otherwise fall through the cracks. Our clients are counting on pensions and 401k accounts from their working years to support them in retirement. We make sure that they can access their money when they need it. We started operating in 1994, initially serving just Massachusetts. Since then, we've expanded to the 6 states of New England, and in 2012, we expanded again to serve Illinois, thanks to a generous grant from the RRF Foundation for Aging. The $68 million that we've recovered is money that sustains our clients, in many cases throughout their lives, in the form of a monthly benefit. PAC serves everyone, regardless of income, age, race, or gender. Typically, 1/4 of the people we serve are people of color, and 10% are Latinx. Just over half of our clients are women, about 80% are over the age of 60, and more than half are low or moderate income. This year, we've had some extraordinary cases come through our office. We've helped taxi drivers, machine operators, nurses, and others who worked hard for many years to earn their retirement benefits. Often, they bring to us detailed records describing the pensions that they earned, but due to problems beyond their control, when they reach age 65, they find that they can't start their benefits. Maybe the company disappeared, or maybe it went through so many mergers that employment and pension records were lost. Some of our clients are grieving widows and widowers who are struggling to understand their rights after a spouse has passed away. Others are divorcees who discover that they need complex and expensive legal documents to get their share of a pension. This year, we were excited to develop pro bono partnerships that expand the services that PAC provides to its clients. Many thanks to our pro bono partners, including Winston & Strawn, McDermott, Will & Emery, and Ropes & Gray. You'll hear more about our extraordinary volunteers later in the program. PAC is part of the UMass Boston Gerontology Institute at the McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies. Our work benefits from the rich intellectual environment at the university, which complements our direct client services to the older people we serve. This year, we received a grant from the Albert and Elaine Borchardt Foundation to partner with our colleague in the gerontology department, Professor Beth Dugan, to study how Massachusetts aging services organizations are responding to the increase in fraud and scams targeting older people. This year, we also were very happy to continue the Kimple internship program for UMass Boston undergrads. The internship provides paid service learning opportunities to UMass Boston's amazing undergraduate students, a program that is intergenerational and impactful. And I'm very pleased today to share that a group of generous PAC supporters has created a PAC endowment fund to support the work into the future. These donations were matched 50 cents on the dollar by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, raising a total of $187,500. I'd like to recognize and sincerely thank our donors, John and Tappy Kimple, Ellen Bruce, Frank and Ellen Daly, and Evelyn Harlampu for their inspiring gifts, which ensure that PAC can continue providing these free services for years to come. We'll have more exciting news about building for the future in the coming months. And now it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Tyler Compton, PAC's staff attorney. Tyler?
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm honored to help co-host this event. As Anna mentioned, we have a yearly student internship program which employs UMass Boston undergrads and law school students to get real-world experience with working in a law office. I'm so pleased to help run the student internship and train our incoming interns and help guide them through this fascinating area of legal practice. I find this particularly impactful because I was a legal intern myself at PAC during law school, and it's fantastic to be able to come full circle. I'm looking forward to introducing Callie Crossley in a few minutes, but first we'd like to share a short video about one of our clients, Richard, and how pro bono attorney and advisory board member, Lori Leonard, helped reunite him with his pension.
At the Pension Action Center, we see all kinds of problems with pensions. Many people contact us because they have a lost pension. They earned a pension a long time ago, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, and this is money that was part of their compensation for the job that they were working. But because their company has been through so many changes, because their pension plan may not even exist anymore, they're having a really hard time figuring out where to go. The Pension Action Center has helped over 11,000 people across our service area, and we've helped our clients recover benefits worth more than $68 million. All of our client services are free, so all of the money that we recover goes back to our clients.
I was recruited by a company called the Kendall Company, which was a healthcare products manufacturer based in Boston. And I joined their accounting group in June of 1977.
Rick worked for the company for a number of years and earned a pension. But then over the subsequent years, the company went through an enormous number of mergers and acquisitions and spinoffs.
They were owned by Tyco, and then they were spun off to become a company called Covidian, and then ultimately Medtronic. I was there for 13 years. I should have a pension benefit as well. And, the response came back that they couldn't find me in their records at all.
In about 2020, I started working with PAC as a volunteer. And it was really exciting to be able to use some of my day job in an area that would help someone that's looking for their pension.
PAC's kind of a must-do to add to your profile as a practicing attorney, that if you can use your specialized knowledge to help somebody who could really benefit from it, that's a huge value add for them, for the community, and for the country, given we have pretty significant problems around people accessing the benefits that they've worked, in some cases a lifetime, to earn and not being able to access those properly.
Yeah, it wasn't a good feeling. When I did leave Kendall in 1990, I was given a document that confirmed that I was in their pension plan, and it even stated what the monthly benefit would be. The really frustrating part was the number of instances where I talked to people, whether they were at, people from Medtronic or Tyco or Covidian. None of the three had any trace or any record of my pension benefit.
So I think Rick's case is very typical in terms of the length of time that it really takes to find this information. I think from the beginning to the end, it was about 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years.
In early 2021, both Lori and Anna sent a letter to on my behalf to the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, PBGC.
So this is an organization that was set up by the federal government to protect the interests of pension participants that is used to pay benefits for people who are subject to plan terminations where their employer may no longer be available or may have gone bankrupt.
It took a few months, but April 1st, 2022, I received my first pension check. You know, while the amount of the pension benefit every month it's not huge, it's something. And it's you know, God forbid something happened to me, it'll be something that my wife gets you know, monthly for the rest of her life. So you know, in that light, every little bit helps.
As the population ages, I think you'll start to see, you know, more and more people looking for that benefit. And it really does make a huge impact, you know, particularly when the economy and inflation is really hitting people hard. To be able to get their pensions when they're supposed to be started is really important in the lives of most people. Any delay in that, even if they're getting their benefits made up, could really impact their lives in retirement.
Yeah, I mean, PAC has an incredible staff, but it's a, you know, relatively smaller agency, and they can only do so much. So they need volunteer lawyers to pitch in and help out and add that specialized knowledge and expand the breadth of what they can do throughout the country. There's going to be an unmet need. So as much as volunteer lawyers can step up and pitch in and do their part to help with cases that, frankly, we know how to do, I view it as critical for people in the field.
We're excited to continue helping older people as they retire. There's a boom in people reaching retirement age right now, and we're seeing an uptick in the number of people who are contacting us for help. And we're so excited that we're able to grow our relationships with the private bar and grow our volunteer programs so that we can keep continuing to serve all of the people who need our help.
Thank you so much to PAC Advisory Board members, Lori Leonard and Todd Solomon, and also to our client, Richard, for sharing his story. Richard's story is not unusual. And when you support PAC, you're helping put dollars directly into the hands of people who earn them and need them in retirement. Our team is efficient. We have just 2 full-time and 1 half-time paid staff members. So we do rely heavily on volunteers. In fiscal year 2022, for each FTE, PAC recovered benefits worth over $700,000 for our clients. Your contribution can make a huge difference. We're posting the link to make a donation in the chat, and I hope that you'll consider making a contribution this afternoon. Thank you so much for supporting this important work. And now it's time for our featured speaker. Tyler, I'll turn the mic back over to you.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Callie Crossley. Ms. Crossley is the host of WGBH's Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, a weekly radio broadcast that covers topics of national interest and spotlights issues facing New England and Boston in particular. Recent episodes have focused on a variety of topics, from the history of the New England Confectionery Company to the impact of 9/11 on younger generations, to the increased popularity of mushroom foraging. In addition to her main program, Ms. Crossley also shares radio essays each Monday on GBH's Morning Edition and hosts the program Basic Black, which focuses on current events impacting communities of color. Ms. Crossley has won numerous awards during her career, including the Gold Baton DuPont Columbia Award, a National Edward R. Murrow Award, and a National Emmy, as well as an Oscar nomination. She was awarded 2 Harvard fellowships and serves on the board of trustees of her alma mater, Wellesley College. Hi, Ms. Crossley. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hi, Tyler. Well, good afternoon to everybody. I'm so happy to be here. When they first contacted me to talk on the program, I wanted to make clear that I'm not a pension expert, but of course, the work of the PAC Center is really not about experts in terms of consumers like myself. It's really about the work that they do as experts to help consumers like myself. So I started thinking about, ways in which I could enter into the discussion, given that I've just said I'm not a pension expert. And I knew I wanted to tell a story about my dad, not about his pension necessarily, but as you'll see in a moment, what I think is the foundation of the work of the PAC Center. And I think it has to be some kind of spiritual moment, because I was frantically looking for some pictures for another situation a day or two ago. And I reached through some old newspapers and put my hands on a note that my mom had sent me. Both my parents have passed. And it was the occasion of my father's retirement. And it was a little note in the newspaper, in the Black newspaper, and saying congratulations are in order for Samuel Crossley, who's retiring from the Southern Regional Office of the U.S. Postal Service. So I brought the paper with me. I thought I meant to talk about Daddy's situation as I had planned anyway, but it felt a little spiritually connect. So as I thought about the theme, which is about equity, I realized that there's two parts of this that make equity possible, and that is access and resources. So you have to have access to get what is owed you, the benefits that you have earned, as we've just heard from one client who, thank goodness, was able to recover what he had earned. But you have to have some resources combined with that to sort of break down all the obstacles in the way. And so that's what the PAC Center is. They're really creating the access, providing the resources through the lawyers who are trained to do this and the volunteer lawyers. And with that combination, then you can approach achieving equity in the marketplace with regard to making certain that people get back those pension benefits that they have earned. I mean, that's what's important. I've spent some time looking at topics related to this. I noticed that there was a panel about racial inequity done recently by Squared Away blog. They talked about the roots of retirement inequity. And this was a line that stood out for me, that billions of dollars in retirement incentives built into a tax code also favors white workers and contributes to inequality. Because, as the article and the conversation went on to say, a lot of workers of color, and the center serves about a quarter of those who are African American or Black, don't engage with the systems that might, to begin with, to even enter into being able to earn pensions about which they can demand that they get the benefits from later on. And I got a little pause there, because you would think, well, that's old timey. Maybe people know how to do that now. Well, I didn't know when I started at another job at ABC News 2020. So I was several years into working at what I think you all can agree is a pretty big corporation before I entered into the match, the 401k match, which of course is critical to the total amount that I will be able to earn back. So there you have it. Access and resources, having the information and being able to access it, it has to all come together. So the story I wanted to tell about my dad is not about pensions, but it's about systemic inequality. My dad was a GI. He was able to, came from a very poor family, both he and my mom did. He was able to go to a historically Black college in Louisiana. He was from Mississippi because of the GI benefits. Now, those benefits available to all veterans, no matter what their race, were very clear. Everybody knew that you could use that to go to school. Okay, fine. That worked out for him. But then later, when he got married, met my mom at the university, got married, they wanted to set up a family, and he wanted to buy a house. He found out that built into the system were obstacles that would prevent Black GIs from being able to get mortgages in certain areas. If you wanted to have an opportunity to buy a house at all, you either had to follow what was really a racist program so that you could enter into the homeowner marketplace, or nothing. My father was not a bitter man. He grew up in a time where there was a lot going on that he could have been bitter about, but this one thing was the thing that he kept bringing up over and over, during our lifetime. And I didn't quite understand where the bitterness came from until I realized really what he meant. He talked often about, if I had been able to have the kind of access to the benefits that I know some of the white GIs had, I would have been able to move to a different location. And what I would have been able to gain in home equity would have put us and our family far ahead. And I would have been able to pass down something to my kids in a way that I just could not do, because it was built into the system. And I wondered, having known that I was coming to have this conversation, what would it have meant if there had been some way for him to have resources that he could have reached out to see if someone could have advocated it for him to figure out, maybe there was a way to untangle that system. There was probably some loophole that he couldn't have figured out alone. And so, of course, that never happened. We lived where we lived. It clearly was not where he wanted to be in the end. And we were fortunate to be able to own anything, because if you know anything about Black home ownership, even today, that's not a norm, or as much as it should be anyway. So I just have to underscore the importance of organizations, of programs, of who are providing the kind of access and resources that can be a weapon. Really, it's a weapon against inequality and a potential boost for equity. And that's the work of the center. That's why the work that they're doing with people like the client that you just saw is very important. To have recovered the millions of dollars that they have from people who have earned this money is tremendously important. I'm glad to be here with you all as having a part of this conversation. And I honor the work that you are doing to restore justice, really, to your clients.
Thank you so much, Ms. Crossley, for sharing that really wonderful story. And it really highlights something that our office has just been so keenly aware of. Back in June, we had an event focusing on the racial equity gap in retirement for people. And it's one of those things that, at the very least, we're just so happy we're here and able to assist our clients with this, because it's just an ongoing problem, as you've noted.
And I think it's still hard for people to understand what is meant by systemic, meaning that it is built into the system, and it's not imaginary. I mean, there are actual real forces built into the system, and you can't always, as just your ordinary person, untangle them without some special assistance. So that's the message that I want to underscore here. Access and resources really are able to achieve equity.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much, Ms. Crossley, for your wonderful remarks. I'd now like to turn it over to just a brief Q&A session. So first and foremost, could you tell us what first sparked your interest in a career in journalism?
My mother. Actually, both my parents were real consumers of information, but my mother was some kind of Renaissance woman, and she had such a narrow life when she grew up, so she didn't really have access to much information. So you would think that it might have had the opposite impact. She grew up in a very, very tiny rural town in Louisiana. I mentioned she got to college, but she only got there because of the determination of my grandfather, her father, who was a sharecropper. There was no Black high school in the town that she was in. So when she finished in the one-room schoolhouse, that was it. There was no more for her. But my grandfather recognized that she was very smart. Nobody had gone to college there. So he literally asked the county agent who came by to negotiate whatever the monetary situation was with him. This guy was white. If there was a nearby town with a Black high school. And the guy said, yeah, there's one, whatever, I can't recall the name of the town, a couple towns over from where they lived. And anyway, grandfather somehow got in touch with a family that lived there, negotiated for my mom to move when she was quite young to live with them. You know, she did some chores or whatever, so she could go to high school. And the result of her going to high school, she graduated top of her class, got all the scholarships, and was able to go to Southern University in Baton Rouge. So the result of that, her growing up in that narrow town, she has many horrific tales to tell about just literally one day asking herself, is it always going to be this way? When she was 16, she went to Marshall Field's department store in Chicago, first time out of Louisiana, first time out of her situation, realized the world is much larger. Here are all these other people I never would have met this young white woman who became a friend of hers for many years, and determined then that my children will always know there is more to know. There is always more to know. There's always more than one way of looking at something. It is your responsibility to find that out. So we grew up with all manner of books. She was huge books. We were big library kids, all newspapers. And this is the story that most people find so interesting about her, because she was open to all ideas. Every Saturday, the young man who represented the Nation of Islam, some people may recognize that as the Black Muslims, would arrive at our house, as he did. He was going around the neighborhood trying to sell bean pies and newspapers, Muhammad Speaks. Most people would just dismiss him. But my mother would engage in a long conversation with him. So I think he would just look forward to talking to her for hours until my father would just get tired of it and say, okay, Maddie, that's enough. But she would come back and say, this is his thought about how we should look at this situation going on in the world or going on here in our community. And our point was, there's more than one way of looking at this. If she must have drilled that into us, I don't know how many times. There's more to life than book learning. Book learning is very important. You have to know. So the result of that is, all right, I'm kind of curious about what else is going on in the world, how I should take a look at the information that comes to me. You have to understand too, though we had many newspapers, we always had the Black newspaper, because the other ones did not reflect anything about the normal lives of Black folks that we knew. We didn't recognize the folks that we see in the quote mainstream newspapers. So with all that going on and the kinds of discussions we had at the table about, current events, and, my father engaged in those, my interest was piqued. I could say that my first real interest, but you'd be the judge, was when I was 8 and I made my own newspaper. I designed it, and then I copied it, and then I distributed it to the neighbors. Learned my first valuable lesson from one of the neighbors who said, thank you, but all of the stories are about you. And I said, and what's the problem? And she said, in journalism, the stories are supposed to be about other people. And that was a new concept. And so I picked that up along with what my mother was sharing, became very interested in it early on. And then it became a clearer and clearer focus as I went through high school and then college. And then eventually got my first job in television news.
That's really such a fascinating kind of history, especially when you have this really great inspiration in a parent that kind of guides you towards and really just kind of supports you through that. It must have been very, kind of fulfilling to you to have a parent like that who's engaging in your interests as well.
Exactly. Now, my father just didn't have widespread interest, but I was sitting on his lap when I first realized what the comic book strip said, because he would read it to me. So they were very much involved in making sure.
Absolutely. So my next question is specifically about your work as host of Under the Radar. You focus a lot of your stories on Massachusetts and New England. In your experience, what makes this region unique?
Wow. Well, first of all, this place is stuffed with all manner of experts. People come here from around the world to tap all of the intellectual acumen that we have that resides in the universities, in the programs, in the innovations. I mean, this is just a rich place to be stimulated by all kinds of things going on. Matter of fact, I think the story I can tell is a friend who left town because she was so disgusted with the social aspect. She felt like it wasn't social enough for her in the way that she wanted, moved, and then said, there's only one thing about it. I can't believe I live in a town now where I can't just go at any given night to 5 lectures, 3 bands playing here of varying musical genres. I mean, it's just rich with so much of that going on that you just have to not want to know more. You have to deliberately shut yourself off to not sort of be able to take advantage of that and expand, who you are and what you know. It's just impossible. So that's what makes, I think, this area so rich. And that goes from the most quirky, wonkiest tech stuff to the nerdiest, pointy head, intellectual stuff to everything in between. It's just a fascinating place to live in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Boston particularly is just a wealth of history, knowledge, innovation, and it's really great that we have our university located here and we're able to kind of touch all of these different areas, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question, specifically as someone with a multi-generational audience, how do you find stories that are impactful and interesting across a diverse audience?
Well, first of all, I have wide-ranging interests. People are always shocked about, what I find fascinating because in some groups, I kind of come across as the kind of pointy head people I was just referring to. And I have enough of that in me. As a college graduate, we're honed to be intellectual, but I can go all the way to the other end to total trash and have interest in it and everything in between. So when you have wide-ranging interests and you live in a community where there's so much going on, that's just a perfect match. There's always something else to talk about. In fact, I get frustrated when I see same people, same stories over and over again. My show is called Under the Radar for a reason. There's so much. Why are you using the same people and doing the same thing over and over again? If we do a story that I like to refer to as having been chewed over by many other people, I hope that we are coming at it with different voices, which then gives you a whole different perspective on it generally, and or some other angle that just hasn't been thought of in that way. And that should be, what we're trying to do, because there's too much going on here just to do the same thing or the same people over and over. And that has nothing to do with the usual, there's no slam on our usual suspects, because our usual suspects are pretty doggone good. I'm just saying there's more usual suspects if you get out of your box. And so I find that interesting, and the people that work with me find it interesting as well. So we have intentionality about trying to find those kinds of stories.
Oh, absolutely. And again, we're all so pleased that you're able to do so, because it just makes for a fascinating program. So my next question, as you know, our event focuses on equity and aging and retirement. One concern that our office really has is the barrier to information that some of our clients face in an increasingly digitized world. Several clients, they don't have computers even, so they aren't able to look up information on the internet. In your opinion, are there any difficulties that you've seen or considered with older populations and access to news and information?
Yeah, for the reasons you just stated. So much has gone digital, or if it hasn't gone digital from a foundational native perspective, in other words, it wasn't based foundationally, now just getting access to what we might call legacy publications. The off-ramp is really through digital portals. And so one way or another, you have to have, again, back to the access, and again, back to the resources in order to be able to connect and be able to get all the information that everybody else is getting. I mean, and that even to some large degree, just to let you know how fast stuff is moving. I am not a huge Facebook person. In fact, I'm a pretty minimal Facebook person. We have a good, strong Facebook audience for our show, and that, of course, we keep up with. But all the other stuff that my friends do on Facebook, I don't necessarily keep up with. So what does that mean? It means every now and then more than every now and then, I'll send something to a friend to say, wow, this is really interesting. And she'll say, oh, I was on Facebook 3 days ago. And she's right. So to some large degree, I really can't afford not to be on it in a social way because a lot of things are going past me. And I will say, unfortunately, there's a lot of assumption about people's ability to be able to access information through a digital portal. I was just looking at, we have a landing page on our website, again, this is digital, for all of our election stories that we've done recently. And we did one where we talked to, not we, my show, but we, our newsroom, folks about voting on primary day. And what stood out to me was there was a woman who had arrived at her voting location and found out it was not her voting location. They had changed it. So of course they let her know, but she didn't get the information because it came digitally. So now she was faced with going to the next location and to cast her vote. The question to her was, would she do it? In this case, she was a super voter. So she said, oh yes, I'm going to do it. But I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10, that's where it stops for a lot of people. They did everything they could to get themselves to that first location. And then to be told, no, this is not it. You're just not going to do it. So my fear is that a lot of voices don't get heard and a lot of people are without all the information. I can tell you right now, I just did a piece for my show about one of the ballot questions. Every single one of those 4 ballot questions is so confusing. If you at this moment cannot have some access to a couple of portals where you can look at it and look at it again to try to understand all the bits and pieces of it, it's going to be difficult if you want to make an informed decision to go in and figure out which side of each of these questions is really one that resonates with you. I mean, I had to say in the middle of the conversation, I still don't get it. I'm conducting the interview. So that's what I'm saying is it is a huge issue. We cannot afford not to leave people behind. And I think we also have to always, when there are situations where people just casually say, well, we'll just put it online, to ask the question, well, how will certain other constituencies get this information? That's incumbent upon us to try to make sure that happens.
Absolutely. And it's, again, it's something that as we have these innovations, as we have all of this ability to put information and store it online, we kind of forget that it's not accessible to a large swath of the population, be it, people who are in the older population who might not have been trained to do this, or even people who don't have access due to poverty. And we see it in our office a lot of times, pensions and 401ks, the benefits are almost always only accessed online. And so people will have to go through this, they'll make phone calls, and the call wait times will be like 45 minutes just to get an agent to say, well, just go on the website. It's not that hard. And
may I remind you, you remember at the beginning of the height of the pandemic, when all the information about how you would, book an appointment and or a vaccine appointment, you had to do it online. And the woman who was pregnant at home figured out a whole system so that it wouldn't be so complicated. I mean, this is crazy. We have to, if we really do mean that everybody's vote and everybody's presence in the community is valued, and that's what we say we mean, then we have to do better. There are community touch points that could be probably accessed more and used better to spread the word. They don't call it the grapevine for nothing. You can use the grapevine. It doesn't have to always be only online.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Crossley. Before we conclude, we do have 2 student questions. They're both UMass Boston students. So first, we'll hear from Setere Masuzadagan.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you for your time, Ms. Crossley. My name is Setere Masuzadagan. I'm a 3rd-year PhD student in UMass Boston's gerontology program, and I'm interested in how housing and neighborhood factors impact older adults. And my question for you is, as the cost of living continues to rise in the city of Boston, what untapped opportunities or innovative models have you seen to address the lack of affordable, accessible rental housing for older adults?
Well, I've not seen much, but just so you know, this is an area of focus for a special project that we are doing at the GBH newsroom called Priced Out. And it's very intense. We've done all neighborhoods, all age groups looking at this. And one of the main reporters, Liz Niesloss, did a spreadsheet just to collect all the responses from folks about issues they were having finding housing that was affordable, just finding housing, any affordable or not, just couldn't find anything. And noticed as she sifted through that a lot of the people who were responding were older women specifically. And so is in the process now of doing a story trying to address the fact that there's a high number of older women. I'm assuming they outlived their partners, and what does that mean in terms of they're trying to find housing that best suits their needs as both an elderly person and potentially maybe an older woman, and that's in process now. That's all that I know. However, one of our other reporters did a piece about this innovative thing that's not necessarily addressed to older persons, but it's interesting. It's the East Boston Community Development Corporation. So you've heard of other community development corporations. This one in particular bought up 114 units that used to be sort of responding to the vagaries of the market. And they're going to make them what they call stabilized housing. It's something called Blue Line Portfolio, and it would be owned by the East Boston Neighborhood Trust. It's a community governed institution. It's a new model called a Mixed Income Neighborhood Trust. So this is pretty interesting. And the groups that have been consulting, one of them you'll recognize, City Life Vita Urbana. As you know, they're pretty active in trying to make sure that the people don't lose their housing and that there's affordable housing. So this is different, her piece says, than typical community development corporations. So that's, as far as I know in this area, this seems to be interesting. And of course, if this is at all successful, then it'll be replicated in other neighborhoods. But that's pretty good, given that we had nothing a year ago or maybe 2 years ago. So it's not the best because we need way more, as we all know. And I think, when they do those agreements with the builders to make sure that there are affordable units in each of those, as we know, sometimes they don't hold up their end of the bargain, or it's not enough units to begin with. They sort of get the pass to build, and there's maybe one unit, and what's affordable, I'm in air quotes now, could be questionable. I think because housing is such a critical issue right now, and it hinges on so much else, it's obviously a link to poverty, as you well know. I don't need to tell you, but what the research says, they're finding that all the people who are showing up at food pantries, this is the link, is the housing. So for all of the folks running for office now, I think a number of them have made housing the top of their agenda because we who live in these communities are asking for that as well. So that's about the only specific thing I can say that's innovative that's going on right now. And, but I mean, it's going to continue to be a huge issue if it's not addressed in some right now way. We can't keep talking about what could happen. I think something has to happen. So we'll see what happens. And a lot of it has to do with who we support, for some of these political positions and what they do with that responsibility. Probably not entirely satisfactory, but that's what I got.
No, that's great.
Thank you so much, Saturday, and thank you so much, Ms. Crossley. We've got Ada Gonzalez next, who is in her senior year at UMass Boston. She actually worked with us as a Kimball Scholar intern next year. So I'll turn it over to Ada.
Oh, thank you, Tyler. My question for you, Ms. Crossley, is when it comes to retirement planning, people often know that they are entitled to money once they retire, but they lack knowledge about how their retirement plan works. With that being said, in your opinion, what role do you believe education, specifically secondary education, can have in reducing some of these obstacles?
Well, I think education is key, and you don't have to wait till secondary. You can actually start having some of these discussions about financial literacy, which I believe is the foundation of all of this, when people are much younger than high school. And that's happening in some communities. And it can't come too soon because, people just don't know. They just do not know. And let's face it, there's a lot of wonky language in there. You may know that some years back, Elizabeth Warren and her daughter, that would be Senator Elizabeth Warren, her daughter, did a breakdown of the 2-income household to sort of disperse with the myths about, what really happens there. And also took a look at, sort of credit card statements and what do they really mean? And discovered when asked some people with a lot of expertise, like, lawyers like herself, that they could not understand what the language was. So for a long time, much of what we need to know about our own financial fortitude has been cloaked in this language that none of us can understand. And so I think anything that can happen that will, set up some strong financial literacy so we know what's supposed to be happening at the basic level of how we run our lives, what a checking account, if you use that, does, how to save your money, where should there be some return on your investment or not. What does it mean right now? We're talking about the feds having raised that interest rate how many times? That's been explained in the briefest of ways in the stories. Thank God that's being explained. But if you didn't understand what an interest rate did to begin with, you're probably one of those bazillions of students who took out those loans, right? Didn't know that the issue was not going to be the amount on the piece of paper when you signed it, but the issue was going to be the interest doubling and tripling over time, so that your $5,000 loan turned into $10,000, turned into $15,000, while you're still trying to earn your first paycheck. So that kind of that's not even basic. That's a little bit more than basic, but we don't generally have financial literacy. We don't have media literacy either, which is another situation and another conversation. But I think it's hand in hand that financial literacy, starting as soon as folk are able to understand any simple concepts in school, is critical. And I think that would go a long way if we are engaging in conversations with our friends and our family in ways that we just haven't. I mean, when's the last time you probably had a conversation with your friend about interest rates or what's happening in how you wish you had invested in this or not? Or is there a way to invest when you don't have any money? Or why is it that all of a sudden X doubled and nobody told me? I mean, all of these things come together in our understanding of how we look down the road with the pension. I just use myself as an example. There I was sitting at ABC. Did I engage in the 401k right away? I did not. That was lack of information, lack of understanding. And I was well past high school at that point. Not long, because I'm so young, but you get my drift. Is that we can't have enough financial literacy.
Thank you for that insightful response, Ms. Crossley. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Crossley. It was an absolute pleasure having you speak with us today. Again, I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you all. I enjoyed it, and good luck. You're doing very important work. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now I'll turn the mic back over to Anna.
Thank you, Tyler. And let me add my sincere thanks to you, Ms. Crossley, for joining us today. At PAC, we're tremendous fans of Under the Radar, and we really appreciate all that you do for the Boston community and are just so grateful to have you with us today as well.
Thanks.
Now, it's my honor to introduce to you one of PAC's volunteer counselors, Marcia Trenholm. Marcia is one of 4 volunteer counselors who work with our staff to search for lost pensions. In addition to Marcia, the other volunteer counselors are Maureen Egan, Connie Vecchione, and Blake Johnson. Thank you, Marcia, so much for being a part of the event today.
Oh, you're welcome.
So,
Anna, can you just turn on your video for us?
Oh, thank you, Emily.
No worries.
Marcia, to start out, can you tell us about your background before you joined PAC?
Yep. So I have a background in internal audit. And so I spent my career working for various banks and insurance companies. And in April of 2021, I retired from Liberty Mutual Insurance here in Boston.
Well, we're very lucky that you joined us as a volunteer. I'd love to hear about what you enjoy about the work for PAC.
So I love being a part of this team because everybody really cares about the clients. But I have to say too that I really enjoy the research. It's detective work, and connecting those dots is extremely challenging. But when you do line them up, it really is a great feeling.
Yeah. And Marcia, I wanted to talk to you about one case in particular that you worked on recently for your client, Ignacio. So just to tell our audience a little bit about Ignacio and his story. So Ignacio was actually a UMass Boston undergrad in the 1980s. He graduated in 1983 with a degree in economics. While he was working as an undergrad, he had a job working for the Yellow Pages, which some of us remember was part of the telephone company. And he continued working for the Yellow Pages after he graduated, and he stayed long enough to earn a pension. Well, now Ignacio is preparing to retire, and he started to look for that benefit. And when he contacted the successor company, he found that there was no record of him or his benefit. Marcia, I want to turn it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened to Ignacio when he tried to start his pension and how you were able to help him?
Yeah, so we reached out to Verizon. He reached out to Verizon, who told him, no, we sold that division, the Yellow Pages. You have to go to the other entity. He went to the other entity, and they were ready to give him, some pension papers to sign. And then a few days later, they called him and said, nope, sorry, you actually don't have a pension benefit. Go back to Verizon. So of course, Verizon told him, nope, we don't have it either. So he was in a big loop. So I talked about this case in our PAC team meeting, and one of the other volunteers, Maureen Egan, remembered a similar case. So she gave me the name of a contact at Verizon. Unfortunately, she was there. She remembered dealing with PAC. She was happy to do the research. She dug in. She found out that Verizon had made an error. And sure enough, Ignacio was indeed eligible for a pension. So he started collecting his benefits a few months ago. So, I realized it's so easy to lose track of a pension, and the PAC experience and the relationships that have been cultivated over the years really was the key that opened the door.
And in this case, Marcia, I remember when we talked to Ignacio when he first contacted the helpline, he had actually initially been told, no, sorry. He had at that point been turned away, and it was only because of your persistence, Marcia, in tracking this down for him that he was able to receive his pension. So I'm very excited. We have a short message, a video message from Ignacio. He wasn't able to join us today, but I'd like to play that message now. Lauren, could we run the video?
Hi there. This is Ignacio Espinoza. Once again, I'm here to express my deep gratitude to the Pension Action Center for everything they were able to do for me in helping me recover my pension from Verizon. I especially want to express my gratitude to Marcia Tranholm and Anna Marie. I believe thoroughly in their work. I'm living proof of their capabilities, and I will continue to support their efforts in their and also their abilities to help others also find their pensions. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.
And Marcia, I also want to join Ignacio in thanking you for your service. You and the other PAC volunteers are truly extraordinary in the work that you do, and I am so grateful to work with you. Thank you so much for all that you do.
You're welcome. It's a great place.
Well, we're lucky to work with you, Marcia. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're almost at the end of our program. I want to turn to Emily Kennerly now, who is PAC's Development and Outreach Director. Emily has been working tirelessly for many weeks to put together today's event, and I'm so grateful for her efforts. Thank you, Emily. Emily's going to say a few words about our PAC interns. Emily?
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. It is my pleasure to be a part of today's event. PAC's work is truly an inspiration, and we're just so happy to have you all here today. Thank you to our audience, our donors, our community. Helping people age with dignity is the goal of our important advocacy work, as you well know. Retirement security and equity in aging are crucial issues of our time. I wanted to share a great testimonial video with Amanda Baker, one of PAC's legal interns, who started with us over the summer and is continuing to work with us throughout this year. Amanda is often the first person to talk to our clients when they call the helpline. She's been a fabulous addition to our team. She is a third-year student at the New England School of Law, recipient of the Sandra Day O'Connor Honors Program and Scholarship, which includes full tuition, and she is a member of the Charles Hamilton Houston Enrichment Program Honor Society. She was not able to be with us today. She actually is in class, but we hope that you enjoy her wonderful video about her experience as an intern with PAC.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Baker and I am a legal intern here at the Pension Action Center. I started working here this summer and it's been an incredible experience working with such a passionate team and helping make a difference in the lives of our clients who often live on a fixed income or who had been relying on their retirement benefit to help supplement their living expenses. In doing intakes, we're often the first interaction that someone has with the Pension Action Center, and it's often the case that the person on the other line had been struggling for a while with their issue, whether that's locating a lost benefit, correcting a mistake, or even just navigating their pension plan. While the circumstances all vary, we exhaust every resource to help our clients. And I know that the Pension Action Center will continue to do great things and further their reach to individuals in need within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Amanda for that wonderful video. It's been wonderful working with Amanda. We enjoy so much working with our students in the Pension Action Center. We've now reached the end of our program. I want to thank you all again for joining us. I also want to ask again that you please consider donating to support PAC's work. With your support, we're just a few $1,000s short of our goal of raising an additional $10,000 in this week. If you can, I hope that you'll consider making a donation by clicking on the link in the chat. I have a number of people who I'd like to thank before we wrap up. First of all, I want to thank Lauren Lewis, who has been helping to run the webinar behind the scenes today. And I also want to thank Callie Crossley, Gerontology Institute Director Jan Muchler, Dean of the McCormick Graduate School, Rita Edozi, Tyler Compton, Emily Kennerly, Roustabout Media, Gina Janovitz, and everyone who helped share PAC's work today. Thank you again to our primary sponsors, AARP Massachusetts, Zarnowski Consulting, McDermott, Will & Emery, Point 32 Health Foundation, Sageview Advisory Group, and Winston & Strawn. And again, let me thank each of you and say how incredibly grateful I am to you for supporting retirement security and retirement equity. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.